Alright. So for my independent reading project, I chose to do this book, Power, Pleasure, and Profit, by David Wooton. And, well, I chose this book because I like philosophy, and this is a sort of philosophy-ish book, and, yeah, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out the rest. So, um, what is it about? Well, I'm pretty sure that anyone can make a wild guess just based on the title. It's about power, pleasure, and profit and how we pursue it. Um, what a guess. Um, and it shows, well, it talks about how a sort of idea that good virtue will lead to success, fell during the Renaissance. And so, alright, let's go through a few chapters. Alright, let's see. So, I liked this book in that it did cover some ideas very in depth. So, it showed, like, why and the consequences of our chase for power, pleasure, and profit. And, okay, so, I think that chapters 2 and 6 are kind of, well, like 2 leads to 6. I think that some chapters were unnecessary or weren't like, they didn't have sufficient content. So, how could this book be improved? Well, some chapters I felt were just sort of Mr. David Wooton here, just like explaining something that I didn't really need to know about. And alright, so let's start. So, 2 and 6, I said, were intertwined. So, basically, power. So, it sort of focuses on politicians and power. And so, in short, because we pursue power without limit, it's like basically we like power. And so politicians will try to stay in power. And usually this will so usually following a political agenda doesn't really get a person far. And alright. So this is the first chapter. It's just insatiable appetites. Basically we pursue these power, pleasure, and profit without end. So a politician will usually just try to further his own agenda and not the people's wants in order to stay in power. And as a result, it's 1 second. We have checks and balances. And how checks and balances work is that whenever some politician's power becomes too large, we may suffer from it and suffer a decrease in our own power. So it's in our interest to limit the other person's power, and that's why we have checks and balances. This way, because we all want power and want to stop others from gaining power, we create a balanced system. So let's go to the next chapter. Power, this power. Okay. Any second now. Any second now. Alright, this is, I think, sort of another one of those, I guess, unnecessary chapters. It's a lot of explaining and what happiness and pleasure are supposed to be. And essentially it says that, oh, alright, this is hard. Alright, so it's saying we want happiness, and it asks, oh, but what is happiness? Happiness is basically, I guess, the net, like, gain. If we have more pleasure than pain, we're happy. sort of a measurement. And so, here, take a look at this. The distinction between pleasure and tranquility was deeply problematic. So, in this context, tranquility sort of relates to happiness, and it's trying to differentiate pleasure and happiness in that pleasure is something that you feel good with, and this is even hard for me. So, happiness is a sort of situation we're in with net gain in pleasure or net loss with more pain. And pleasure is just all of the like positive feelings, like for instance eating ice cream. That's not happiness. That's pleasure. Playing video games, getting a good grade on test, all of that is pleasure. And being content with your situation, I guess, could be called happiness. It's very tricky, and so this chapter is simply defining. Let's go to the next. Alright, so this is selfish systems, Hobbes and Locke. So Hobbes and Locke were both, I think, Scottish philosophers. And so, essentially, they're saying, what do we do to gain pleasure? And so, one thing is that, well, basically, we help others because it makes us feel good. So, I think, alright, and so, your pleasures become my pleasures, and your pains become my pains. And so, well, there's a statement later on in the book that says why. Basically, we imagine ourselves in other people's situations, and it gives us pain to see a starving person on the sidewalk. Therefore, in order to minimize pain, we give the person money to make ourselves feel better. That's essentially what Hume is saying here. And this is all about empathy and, well, the word is fellow feeling. Okay, next chapter. Okay, utility. I think. This is another one of those chapters defining. Let's see. Yeah, this is just defining happiness. Alright, the state covered that. Okay, this is my favorite part. I like the economy, and yeah. Okay. So basically, this is covering the profit side of things. So essentially, I'll start off from a sort of passage from Adam Smith, and basically he says that it's not from other people's kindness that we get our meals; it's from their concern for their self-interest. Basically, we all want money, so we sell things. But I think it's here. Or not. Alright, so essentially what Adam Smith is saying, it's because of selfishness and greed that we sell things, and what he argues, and that's the invisible hand, is that it's good for society. Because let's say, for instance, as a pin manufacturer, his selfishness will cause him to find a new way of mass producing pins, and as a result, he makes money, but soon enough, his competitors catch along, and then everybody is mass producing pins. So why is this good? Well, so the price of pins has just dropped because there's now an obscene amount of pins from this new society. Well, wait, not new society, new way of mass production, and it's good for the consumer as well. So this like greed sort of fuels the like new ways of production, and obviously that's good for society. More things, more production enables us to do more things, such as let's see, so mass production. Wait, okay, my brain just short circuited. More things equals better, essentially, and because of our greed, we make more things. This is also another part. This is sort of covering the negative effects of what happens, and essentially, some people, like, what happens when there's famine and poverty? Well, so because of the economy, well, and we're selfish, we kind of have to charge money for bread. And let's say there's a famine, some poor people cannot buy bread. And that is sort of, well, a very big downside, because essentially people can starve because of this free market. And especially the people who are not in this free market and are poor because they haven't accessed this sort of competition to produce more things and get more wealth, they can't like afford to buy bread, and as a result they starve. So for instance, the Irish famines. Let's see, go on. Self-evidence. This was another, this is sort of a summary of everything. So alright, essentially human beings all pursue pleasure and flee pain. And so there's like no direct measure of what is pleasurable, but in today's society it's very easy to get pleasure, such as scrolling through social media or playing video games. And happiness and success consist in excessive pleasure over pain. Alright, so here's an important thing. Reason is the slave of the passions, basically. All of our intellect goes to getting more power, pleasure, and profit. And these passions can be set against each other. So, like, for example, one guy can spend so much time thinking about his future, and as a result, he never enjoys himself. And reasoning consists of engaging in cost-benefit analysis. This is basically reason is the slave of the passions. Your brain, very smart brain, is just trying to find the way in order to get the most power, pleasure, and profit, and the least pain. And in society, okay. So human beings are naturally sociable insofar as they feel sympathy and pity. So this is basically saying that other people's pain becomes our pain because we can imagine ourselves in that position. So let's say someone was starving on the street. I can't feel his pain, but I can imagine myself in his position. And, well, obviously, imagining myself in his position, it's very weak compared to the pain he's feeling. But I'm distraught because of what I imagined. And as a result, I give him some money or food in order to sort of make myself feel relieved. And fortunately, thanks to an invisible hand, this is the pins, all of us being greedy is good for society. We find new ways to produce things, new way to market things, new ways to build. Basically, we keep on innovating and pushing technology to get more things, and what benefits is society. We have more technology and more goods. Basically, we have more material wealth, technology, and everything growing because of our greed and our very smart minds pursue this and invent new things. And in moral philosophy, although human beings are self interested, the welfare of others can be a source of pleasure to them, and the suffering of others can be a pain. This ties back to human beings being naturally sociable. And so, education, public opinion, and the law must be mobilized to reinforce behavior which is beneficial to others and penalize behavior which is detrimental to others. Duty and interest must be brought to coincide. Basically saying that our like what we think about these is to benefit society. And this is about politics. Political actors always want to keep power. And so as a result, checks and balances, this way people compete and no one gets too powerful. Such as free press and public opinion, political parties. And so one person's gain is another one's detriment. And essentially with all these competing powers, nobody gets too powerful. And in economics, this is sort of same thing. So the self-interested pursuit of wealth must sometimes be at odds with our moral obligations to our neighbors. This is an interesting one. Basically saying that our sort of greed can harm others. Well, I suppose it has. And basically, part A just sums it up. Our selfishness results in everybody's gain because of our intellect being used to sort of gain more profit. We come up with new ideas, and this benefits us. And so nowadays, it's sort of alright, and this way of thinking, like we like pleasure and don't like pain, has sort of ruined the moral character where if you're a good person, you'll achieve success. And Machiavelli was an Italian statesman, and he wrote several books on how to get powerful and how a prince should treat his people. All of them were pretty ruthless and like not very moral. And this combined with Enlightenment philosophers saying that we like pleasure and don't like pain, sort of like killed the moral character of humanity. Like, you don't need to be good. You don't need to be a good, kind person to achieve success. And now these three P's have just instead replaced what our moral character once was. I think it's quite a nice take. It's very direct and not very optimistic. But I did enjoy reading this. And I would honestly recommend this to um, people who are interested in philosophy. Also, some people who are interested in politics too, because this does sort of define how people behave now. Yeah, that's it.